Hi there, Semele. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you today to the Inner Goddess Summit.
Oh, thank you, Bonnie. It's just lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me on.
Oh, thank you for saying yes. I'm so happy that you said yes, and you said yes twice because I got my wires crossed. So thank you for your patience, and thank you for being here. It's just such a delight to have you. I I have to tell you, from moment one when I met you, there's just something about your energy that is so light and tingly and uplifting and pleasant. So I'm really, really happy to be able to have this time with you today.
That's very kind of you to say. Thank you.
You're welcome. Could you just give us a little bit of your background? Like what do you do?
Yes, I am currently working as a intuitive healer, animal communicator, tarot reader, and many forms of therapy involved. I'm trained as a Reiki master, and I've also trained as a crystal therapist, and something called spirit release, which deals with much more of the soul energy kind of healing, past lives and past traumas, that sort of thing.
Oh, I love it. I always, every single time I speak to someone in the UK, you guys always have some little healing something that I've never heard of. And they're so fascinating. So thank you for bringing another one into my realm of awareness. That's great. And so you do a lot of things, Emily.
Yeah.
And as with a lot of people, there are a lot of us who, we have a lot of hats that we wear. But I know you mentioned that you kind of have an interesting story that has led you to where you are. And I don't even know it yet. So I would love if you would be willing to share your story.
Yes, I will. I will, because it's going to be very pertinent to the exercise I'm going to share later. And we're going to talk a little bit about this issue, which comes up for many, many women, especially as they're beginning to step into their power and become the inner goddess that they are. So I started off my childhood as very, very painfully shy. So very, very little sense of self and very little confidence. So what I found was I would just kind of observe and then be what I thought people wanted me to be. And this continued right through until my 30s. I've always had a spiritual side. Strange things would sometimes happen to me and I would see things, but I kind of didn't explore it further because at the time, my spirituality was very much centered in the Christian church, and there are certain things you can and can't do within that context. So again, this is all around the theme of who you really are, and are you following that or expressing it, or are you kind of ignoring it and suppressing it? And I was doing that a lot. I was trying to fit in and be what society and culture and people wanted me to be. So this happened right through to my 30s, really, my early 30s. And at the same time, to illustrate this is all going to tie together when we get to talking about the exercise. I, from a baby, had a really, really nasty cough. I don't know if you have this name in the States. We call it the croup. It's like whooping cough, which is that horrible barky cough where you can't breathe. You would have moments, and my mum used to say I'd scare her to death sometimes because it was like I was going to stop breathing. And then all through until my early 30s, I had at least 2 or 3 times a year this horrible cough, tonsillitis, laryngitis, a chest infection, all throat chakra based.
Wow.
Because, and this was 2 or 3 times, I cannot tell you how many antibiotics I took. And
imagine.
What I know now, of course, is that I wasn't speaking my truth. I wasn't following my soul. I was suppressing everything that was me and just trying to fit in. So what brought this all to a head was I found myself in my early 30s in a very unhappy marriage with 2 small children, and someone gave me a book. I don't know if you know Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. Amazing book. That's the book for inner goddesses. I recommend it. In fact, I gave it to all my friends after I read it. And when I read that book, it connected with everything I was feeling inside. She even described dreams I was having. It blew my mind. And there was this explosion of spiritual energy in me. And I was suddenly seeing all those things that I tried to stop myself seeing, and feeling all those things that I tried to say, I'm just imagining that. And what it led to was me leaving that marriage, which wasn't an easy choice because I had 2 small boys at the time. So I found myself as a single parent. But it was like knowing, if I stay here, I'll die. It was that strong an intuition. If I stay in this marriage, I'll die, because the creative soul part of me was not being able to express itself. So a friend at the time, a lovely friend, said, I know a Reiki healer and I know a really good tarot reader. Why don't you go and see them and just get some direction? Because you think you know where your life is going, and then suddenly, whoa, it was all up in the air. And I had no idea. And the most amazing thing happened with both of these ladies. As soon as I walked in and sat down in front of the tarot reader, she just looked at me with this expression and she said, well, you may as well be giving me the reading. And I said, what? And she said, you do know you're psychic, don't you? And very sensitive to energies. I went, really? And then we had this amazing reading where she was like, I know, it was incredible. And the same thing with my first Reiki treatment. I walked into the room, the lady was preparing, she was washing her hands, and she turned around and she kind of flicked her hands, and I docked. And she went, you felt that energy, didn't you? And I said, yes, well, it was really strong. And she just said, you're a healer. So it was like these 2 amazing women just arrived at the time, and they set me off on the journey. So from there, I was just opening up to meditation and alternative therapies and healing. And I explored them at first for my own benefit, to heal myself, which is always the first part of the journey. And then obviously eventually began to train in them to help others. And it was fascinating because as that journey went on, what I hardly noticed was that those throats, chest infections were slowly dropping away, slowly becoming less. I was doing lots of Reiki self-healing, but actually not going to anyone else for treatment. And I was learning my tarot, and I was already reading for friends, and then they started saying, can you read for my friend? And it started to expand. And suddenly I was using my voice for soul work and for my soul work. And then suddenly I remember I suddenly got to this point where I thought, it's been about 2 years and I haven't even had the hint of a sore throat, no cough, no chest infection. And it had just vanished. Lots of self-healing. So it wasn't an overnight thing. But yeah, incredible. Along the way, though, more things about throat chakra. So obviously I had to stand up, and many people, when I decided to get divorced, came at me with, you've got small children, it's going to ruin their lives, you can't do that, you know. And then of course I was a Christian at the time, so it's, well, you've made vows, you must stay committed. So that again was me having to speak up and say, no, this isn't right for me. And it wasn't easy. It would have been the easier decision to stay there, to be honest. I knew I was making a difficult decision. And then further down the line, when my Celtic blood, I'm quarter Irish, and I've always felt very Celtic. I love the music, I love the landscape. And I wanted to move to Wales. That was another intuition. I have to move to Wales, another Celtic land. And my ex-husband decided to take me to court for custody of the children. So again, I had to really, I was like, the old me would have just for peace said, okay, I won't go. Okay, I won't go, I'll stay here, and, you know, and we'll carry on as normal. But then my soul said, no, you have to claim your own power. This is your soul now telling you where you should be in the world. This is your place. Wales is your place. And so I went through the court case. I had to stand up and very publicly in front of a judge and other people say, you know, this is my choice. I can make a choice. So interesting how those challenges just kept coming at me for a number of years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what a challenging place to have to practice using your voice in a courtroom in front of a judge, because,
Yeah.
that's one of
Yes.
the places that I think for a lot of us, we just think about it and like, ooh, we don't want to, we don't want to move, we don't want to speak, let alone actually having to be there and do it. Wow, you're
Yeah.
brave.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If you told me I would have done that, just a few years before that happened, I would have said, no, I'm done for a peaceful life. I will just, I don't want to rock the boat. But it was so important. It was so important to do it,
Right.
to not let myself be controlled or told what to do. And of course, that meant I had to also say goodbye to the Christian church because it was too limiting. It was not accepting of some of the things I was exploring and wanting to work with. So yeah, there were a lot of times when I had to be really brave and say, I'm out of here because it's not what my soul wants.
That's wow. So you have had quite the journey and quite the number of challenges. And it's so amazing. I'm not surprised because I've done a lot of work where I've seen these kinds of things happen, but I never cease to be amazed when something like that happens, where you start speaking up and these throat chakra issues you've had your entire life they just disappear. I mean, that was for more than 30 years. You were having twice a year, you were having this. That's huge to shift that. That's enormous.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, it was a long, long time. And then that was on the physical level. And then obviously, as you go further along, and you'll know this because you've done the work, you also start getting issues on other levels. So although I know I was no longer having physical symptoms, I would come across blocks. As soon as you step into your healing energy or your empowering others energy, you can feel like your throat start to close up a bit, can't you? It kind of tightens. And so I had to do all the clearing of lines where I was earned as a witch, ostracized from the village, left with no support. Because on the other side, which not many people talk about, I reached a certain point in my healing when I just knew I was holding back. I knew I could give more to my clients, but there was something there. And I was like, I have to investigate this. And bless him, part of my spirit release course is doing past life regressions. So I gave my partner a script, bless him, and said, I'm going to lie on the bed. You read me through the through the regression and let's get to the bottom of this. And what it was a lifetime where I'd been a very powerful priest. I was male in that lifetime. I'd been a very powerful priest who had so much ability magically and with energy, but I chose to use it for myself. I chose to use it to bring myself wealth and fame and whatever I wanted. And what had happened was my soul was going, you can't do more than this because you know what happened. You're going to start abusing it. It's all going to go horribly wrong. And I had to really come back to my soul, and my soul was saying, no, you've done that journey. There's no way you're going to make that mistake again. You are so aligned. You can go ahead. But I had to release that memory. So sometimes we forget that, we've all, to get to the point we're at, we've all been on the negative side, if you like.
Right. And I think we all hit points where something is a challenge for us because of some past experience, whether it's past life or this life.
Yes.
In this life, but we get things stored in us and we have to figure out how to move past them. And listening to you talk about the throat chakra and your healing that has happened, it reminds me, as a yoga teacher, I've come across information and studies that show, that the yogic belief is that the throat chakra is where you really do the healing. Like you of course, all the chakras need to be balanced, you need to be healed, and all of them. But the thinking is that in the throat chakra is, if you can heal this, you can heal everything else. So the importance of healing this, and the importance of us as beings to to realize and understand that we really do need to open our mouths and speak, and speak truthfully and
Yeah.
true to ourselves. And even if that means standing up in court and saying to a judge, no, I need to move, and knowing that, having your children or not having your children with you is on the line. I mean, that's really intense, but, more intense, which we don't sometimes realize, is our health.
Yes.
On all levels: physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. I mean,
Yes.
you were faced with probably one of the biggest choices a woman can ever make, which is, facing the possibility of not being able to be with her children every day, not having her children with her. That's humongous. Versus speaking your truth and standing up for yourself. I mean, wow, kudos to you, because I think we can all just sort of give you our utmost respect, and yeah, hats off to you, because that's
thank you. I have a wonderful photograph of that time. I started to dress very differently during that court case. This is just an interesting aside, really. My hair's usually like straight like this, but I had it cut a little bit shorter, and I dyed it quite bright red, and I had it spiky. And I started wearing, which were fashionable at the time, the little vest tops and combat trousers. Almost like, I was into the warrior woman. And I had a past life in meditation. I had a past life memory of a Celtic warrior woman who had this masses of red hair and bright blue eyes. And I have a photo taken of me at the time. And it was my dad who looked at it. My dad took the photo, and when he had it printed, he picked this photo up, and then he said to me, come and have a look at this. He said, your eyes are blue. And my eyes are hazel. I don't know if you can see. And sure enough, in the picture, my eyes are bright blue. It's astonishing. And I think she was there. She was that part of me was coming forward to say, we can do this. We can fight this battle. I know.
That's amazing. That's really incredible. It's so just, I don't even have the word for it. Amazing, for lack of a better word, but it's so incredible how things show up in us, and we don't even realize it. I mean, like that, you were, essentially using the current fashion of the time, but to dress for battle.
Yeah.
I mean, you were going into battle, to get your children, but also to defend yourself, and to get yourself out of all of it, because I think that's what often happens as women. We get married, we take on another man's name, we have children, we become mothers, we get so inundated with caring for little people, and it's very easy to lose oneself in all of that. And so yeah, you kind of were dressing for battle to save yourself and your children.
Yeah.
Incredible. So I would like, because we were having this conversation before we started this interview, I would love if you could share a little bit about this last name thing, because that's something that I have recently been chewing on, and what do? I have my husband's last name. We're divorced. How do I, do I keep that? Do I go back to my maiden name? I never really felt that my maiden name fit. So I've been, what do I do? And you said some really interesting things before we started this interview. Would you mind to share your thoughts on that?
Of course I will. Yeah, I've done the same thing, because Sherry is not my surname, really. I've been married twice, and it's my second husband's surname. And when we split up, I was the same as you mentioned. I was going, oh, is it right to hold on to that name? But something in me really didn't want to let it go. And then I just suddenly thought, you know what, this holds the energy signature of where I am. And it sounds right. It sounds like me. So why can't I claim it for mine? Why can't I just keep it? Because it's me. And that's another throat chakra thing, isn't it? Because Throat chakra is about communication, and that includes words, and words have power. So, in magical terms, names give people power over things. So there is such power in it. So if you have a name that you're not comfortable with and doesn't feel like you, then you're almost automatically kind of out of odds with yourself. So I think it's really important to choose a name that fits with who you are.
And you just said something really interesting and powerful. You said, names have power. They're magical. They have power. And it reminds me, when I was growing up as a child, I remember reading that Native Americans from North America, at least, believed that, they had a name that they were called by, but then they, at some point, were given their real name, their spirit name. And that name they did not tell anyone, because if they did, it would give that person power over them.
Exactly, yes.
Shared. It was between them and spirit, or them and source. And so, yes, I think what you're saying is exactly right. And I had already been thinking about last names a lot, because not long after I got married, I met a woman who it was very well-meaning, but she was very shocked that I had taken my husband's last name. She was like, "You, of all people, I can't believe you took your husband's last name." And so I started thinking about that. I was like, well, why did I take it? Well, I took it because it felt right. I took it because it went with the rest of my name. I took it because I liked it. I took it because I thought if I had children one day, it would be nice if we had the same last name. But I really started thinking deeper about it. And it was like, well, I've got one man's name or another, either the man that I was born because he's my father. And so I just have his name because I was born with that. And that's very important for so many people. Or I have the name of the man that I chose. So which one is it? I didn't have a great relationship with my father, so it wasn't like particularly attached to it. And I never felt like it rang nicely with the rest of my name, and never resonated with it that much. I know a lot of people feel like that's maybe not a good thing because it's your family and your heritage. But if you really go back and start looking at surnames, it's not something that people always had anyway. It's something we've come up with in later years.
Yeah, certainly. If you look at most of the surnames in the UK, they're old, and they usually described what people did.
Exactly.
So yeah, it was their job. So and I guess maybe, I don't know, but that's an interesting thing to bring up, isn't it? Because obviously women back then didn't really have a trade or a job at that time. So maybe that's why we just, we had the name of our father, or we had the name of the husband that we then married, because we didn't have anything unto ourselves. Ooh.
Ooh.
Yeah, I had goosebumps when I said that.
Yeah. If you think my surname, my birth name was Smith. You have goldsmiths, blacksmiths, silversmiths. You have all the Smiths. Job, definitely. And then you have my mother's maiden name was Mullis, and that came from Switzerland, and they were millers, and that was
right.
So the word Mullis, I don't remember exactly how the whole evolution of that, but anyway, Mullis came from a word that meant miller. So yeah. Right. So anyway, yeah. So thank you for going down that little rabbit trail with me, because
it's fun.
It's an important topic, and we don't really talk about it. And I'm not sure if we're allowed to talk about it or not.
Yes, I know it's difficult, isn't it? But again, it's just that you have to be true to yourself thing. There are so many supposed rules and regulations that we're supposed to live by, but in the end, if it's not feeling right in here and to your soul, then, and that's constantly the big lesson of my life, is this right for me? And not in a, and that's the other problem. So many people think when they hear that kind of phrase, they're like, oh, well, that's very selfish. And it's like, well, no, because if it feels right for me, then I have more energy and I feel more joy, and I will give more because it's what I'm supposed to be doing.
Exactly. When you have more energy and more joy, you can absolutely give more. And so everyone around you benefits. So it's not selfish in the end at all. And I find it interesting that, we're told when we fly on a plane, please make sure you must put on your oxygen mask first if there's a problem before you put it on someone else. But any other situation, don't take care of yourself first.
Yes, that's right.
Or at all. How dare you? That's very selfish of you, but it's all the same, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
If the plane's going down and you don't have oxygen, you can't help someone. So put your mask on, for heaven's sakes. And what's the difference if your own plane is going down? You can't help anyone. So for heaven's sakes, use the name you want to use, live in Wales if you want to live in Wales, rather than wherever you're living that is making you unhappy and unfulfilled, and speak up and say the things you need to say so that you're not getting bronchitis twice a year and being sick twice a year. How much can you give when you feel like that twice a year? Not much.
No, exactly.
So tell me a little, Simile, about tell me a little bit about your voice work, because there's so much now going on. There's so much sound healing is sort of a buzz, right? And it's a good buzz. I'm glad, because it's so powerful. There's so much healing to be done with sound, and, whether it's crystal bowls and Tibetan bowls or drums or whatever it is. But I did a summit there's a group called the Shift Network here in the States that they just really
yes, I know.
They do amazing summits. And during the pandemic, they did a sound healing summit. And I visited. It was so good. And that's another resource for those of you who are listening. Go look up the Shift Network if you've never heard of them, because they have amazing things. It's a good tool to tap into. But anyway, so on this summit, they had a lot of people who use their voice for healing purposes. And I remember one of the women saying, like, one of the most important things you can do for your own self-healing is just walk around humming all the time. Just hum. Humming is such a powerful tool to heal yourself. And I was talking about this the other day to a girlfriend of mine, and she's from Brazil, and she said, I believe that. She said, her aunt had just passed away like a week before, at 95 or 6 years old, something like that. And she said, my aunt always walked around humming. She hummed all the time. She said you would sit next to her, and sometimes she wouldn't even talk, but it was so nice to be near her because she just sat there and hummed. She hummed all the time, and she was never sick. She never had anything wrong. And when she passed away, she wasn't sick. So she said, I really believe there's something to this humming thing. So I know you told me a little bit about what you do with voice and a little bit about how you came into that. Can you share with us about that?
Yes. So I never really intended to go there. It's not a discipline that I've studied strictly, but what I found was in working with clients, I do a lot of obviously guiding them into a relaxed state. And then often just in a reading as well, the way I'm talking to people. And I would have so many comments about, there's something about your voice. It just puts us in a sort of peaceful place, and there's like an energy behind it. And I just kind of filed that away as useful. And then I was on a wonderful midlife adventure. So when my boys, who I did take to Wales with me, when they were grown up, hurrah! When they were grown up enough to leave home, I fancied an adventure, because I'd done the straight from school to university to marriage to work to thing, and I just thought, let's have an adventure. So me and my partner bought a camper van, and we lived in it for nearly 2 years. And my soul was saying, just travel around all the sacred sites, as many sacred sites as you can in the UK. And so we did lots of stone circles and standing stones and burial chambers. I'm very drawn to that sort of ancient Celtic feel. And what I found as I was standing in those places, a song was just kind of coming up in my throat, and it wanted expression. So I began to sing them. And then not really knowing what it was, I was then started to be guided to in some healing sessions, not all, but it's just always working intuitively. If it's right, I will sing something to someone. And so I would sing a song. Often I don't have a clear idea of what it is I'm singing. And I don't know if you know light language, but it's not a language as such. It's more like sounds, really. And I understood then in working with clients that it's coming direct from source. So there's divine cosmic energy, and this I learned in sacred sites. There's divine cosmic energy and there's divine earth energy, and they meet in those places. That's why they're there. Often they're aligned. Stone circles are often aligned to planetary movements, sun and moon at solstice, but they also have those stones rooted deeply in the earth acupuncture. So they're bringing those two energies together. And that's why those songs were starting to come through in those places, because they're unique places where those two energies meet in a really powerful way. And so what I feel is those songs can have physically healing energy, because the earth energy will support your body, but then the cosmic divine energy will bring in soul energy, which is where the real healing has to happen, I think. I mean, I've heard some people say that all illness or dis-ease, if you put a hyphen in it, is basically where you're not following your soul. It's where you're moving away from your soul. And I think that's probably right. So what I feel that singing does, that light language singing does, is just bring people back on track. Just say, this is what your soul is singing to you now.
Oh, that's beautiful to think that your soul might be singing to you. How lovely is that?
All the time, I think.
Yes, I'm sure it probably is. You know, I mean, everything comes in waves, and everything is expressed, you know, either as sound, you know, sound, sight, smell, taste, touch. I mean, it all, you know, it all is a vibration. It just expresses itself at a different rate, so we experience it from a different perspective.
Yes. And it's such, because it's our place of self-expression. And what I always love to kind of pick apart a little bit is how all this knowing, even though sadly a lot of our culture now has forgotten it, it's just there in the language. So you'll often hear someone say when they're trying not to cry, I've got a lump in my throat. Well, yes, because you're not letting the emotion flow through. Or they'll say, well, I was really annoyed, but I swallowed my anger. Where does it get stuck?
Hey, when you swallow your anger, where does it go?
Yes, that's right.
What you do with it once you swallowed it, and how is that going to express itself later down the road?
Exactly. Yeah. So we know this stuff, but I think it's also about that to tie in with that thing about magic and power and manifestation. I think it's also that. I think it comes from the throat. Because we have to think. We think first, we have an idea, but then speaking it makes it real. So I think it's a huge part in manifesting things. So if people can't, you know, they might have loads of great ideas, but they really struggle to actually get them to happen in any kind of way, it can often be a throat chakra blockage. And it's also, I see it as like a higher level of the solar plexus too. So our will is in the solar plexus, but the throat is where our will aligns with divine will. And perhaps that's where the yogic thing of heal this and you heal everything comes in, because again, it's being aligned to soul. Then you're going to come into balance.
Well, and in the yogic tradition, I mean, they use mantra, you know, which is sound.
Yes. You know? Oh, I love mantras. Yes. That was part of my journey. I'd totally forgotten. Yeah, I bought a lovely book with a CD, and I was chanting mantra for months and years.
If you really go back and look and learn about the ancient languages, Sanskrit, for example, the ancient languages were actually, I don't know, designed, put together, for lack of a better word. Their intention was to hit certain places in the mouth to create a reaction in the body. And so if you said, Om Shanti, it was because, each part of both of those words, or, well, Om is actually a seed syllable or a bija, but Shanti, those sounds hit certain places in your mouth. And this is why they, a big part of why they work, or why they create some sort of shift in us, is because the ancients knew that, by using sound in particular way to touch certain points of the mouth, that the rest of the body would be influenced and react accordingly. So yeah, it's important stuff.
It is.
That's why it's important to mind what you say,
Yes. In the tarot, the card of communication, the suit of communication is the swords. And I always think of it, if you look at swords, if you take the S off the front, you've got words. And then swords, and sword is a weapon. So it can hurt and maim, or it can cut away what's not true. It can cut away confusion, and it can bring through truth. So, yeah.
Literally and figuratively. And that's something I think about a lot when I hear people using words, and particularly people who are more on a path of consciousness and trying to be, in a more higher spiritual path. And this is not, I don't mean this in a judgment way at all, but because of what I just shared about words and how, they do affect. I think about, sometimes I hear people just using like these words that are so harsh and so hard. And I think, why are we doing that? Can we shift? Can we find another word that has at different places that it hits in the mouth? Because surely these words that we're using, when we're just throwing out words that are harsh and hard, surely they are affecting not only you, but me as well as I hear them. So yeah, it is, I think it's very, very important. Words. Oh yeah. Bruce Lee, I just read somewhere the other day that Bruce Lee says, words are magic. That's why it's called spelling.
Yes, well, that's where spell came from, didn't it? Yeah, writing out the words. You literally spell. So yeah, you do create magic with with your words.
Can you share anything with us that sounds, I don't know, something, exercises that we could do to?
Yes. So I've got three kind of really simple tips, just that you could do at home anytime, and then I've got a really nice exercise to do with you. So if you're happy to be kind of the guinea pig and making the sounds and doing the thing.
I am happy to be the guinea pig. This is what my husband used to call it, instead of the guinea pig.
Oh, so cute.
I'm happy to be the penny gig, because yes, I mean my words are important. So yes, I want to use my voice and my words in the best way possible.
Wonderful.
Because how can I connect with my divine feminine, my inner goddess, if I'm not paying attention to my words and the sounds that come out of me, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not sure, and obviously we've got lots of people watching this and they'll be at different places in the journey. So I wanted to keep three things that are very basic, really. One is more of an advice, really, and it's just to encourage people. And that is, as you probably learned from my journey, often we have to learn how to say our no before we can learn to say yes. Just to encourage people, if you think, because it's so important, isn't it? That thing of boundaries and taking your power back. And I was saying a lot of no's first before I was then saying yes to things like becoming a healer and learning meditation and all of that. So just to encourage people, if you're in that space, you do need to learn to say no first. That's an important thing. Sometimes I'll get clients to practice that if there's someone who can't say no and are just very giving, I'll just get them to shout it at me, louder and louder. Just practice saying it. So that's a
really good.
Yeah. The other one you kind of already said, but the humming. But everyone says, dance as if no one is watching. That's a famous one. But I'm always like, sing as if no one is listening. That's my other tip. Just sing, just use your voice. And none of this rubbish of I can't sing, that so many people were told they can't sing. And of course, what does that do to your throat? It shuts it down because it goes, I can't do it. I sound awful. Mm-hmm. So that's just a thing. Sing in the shower, sing when you're doing the housework. Just let your voice out with no judgment. It doesn't matter what it sounds like. It's your voice. And then the third one, this one came through today, actually, as I was just thinking about the interview, is we have, if you want to just do some work on your own, this is a nice, just little healing one. If you're ever laying down, relaxing, we have this lovely, it's got a special name. Do you know what this is called? This lovely hollow at the base of your throat.
What is it called?
I don't know. That's why I was asking. I forgot to look it up. I know it's.
I'm a massage therapist. I should know this. There is a word for this part. I don't know if you mean this or if you mean.
It's the little hollow. It's the little hollow, just where the bones kind of cradle. They make a little. I don't know what
that. I should know this. I cannot.
Sorry.
But yes, it doesn't have a name.
I was going to look it up and I totally forgot. I went on to other things. But anyway, it's a beautiful space to put a crystal, basically. And when I was tuning in specifically to all the lovely people on this summit, I was told lapis lazuli is the stone to open the throat and balance the throat chakra, because it's got that lovely deep blue, the color of the throat chakra, but those flecks of gold. Beloved of the Egyptians, of course, lapis lazuli, because they associated it with royalty. But what I was told was to bring your queen out to speak through your throat. You take on your own royalty, your own sovereignty. So you can just lie down and relaxing whenever you're relaxing, and just put a little bit of lapis lazuli on your throat and let it do its thing.
Wow. I love that. Absolutely. Anyway, it's one of my favorite stones.
Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it? I very unknowingly, this was before I got into all of this, the first ring I ever bought for myself was a little silver ring with a stone in it. And guess what the stone was? I found out many years later. A lapis lazuli.
Of course.
we know this stuff, don't we?
Your throat was going to heal one way or the other.
Yeah, that's right. My soul had a mission for sure. So this is an exercise now that anyone can do. It's not, I have to be careful because obviously we're not in a therapeutic situation. I don't want to bring up anything too traumatic for people, which can happen. So this is just a really nice, simple exercise. And it's so interesting that we were talking about names, because it brings in your name too.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Okay. So just start by getting really nice and comfortable. And then just allow your shoulders to drop. I don't know about you, but I nearly always have tension in the shoulders. I have to consciously relax them. That's it. And just take some really deep breaths, deep into your belly. Lovely. And as you continue to breathe, just ask and intend that your chest and your heart chakra opens. And just by setting our intention that will happen, it does. So feel that lovely warming and opening in the chest area. And then on the next in-breath, just begin to hum. And then take another breath if you need to keep the hum going. Lovely. And then next time you begin the hum, when you feel ready, just open your mouth and change to ah, keeping your throat as open as possible. Beautiful. And now this is the other aspect of the throat chakra and communication, and that is deep listening. So in the silence now, after that beautiful sound you just made, just ask the question, who am I? Who makes this sound? And now I just want you to speak your name. Just say your name aloud.
Bonnie.
And again.
Bonnie.
Now hear the music in that as you say it. A rise and fall.
Bonnie. Bonnie.
And now sing it with that rise and fall, with that same rise and fall. And then again in the silence after that sound, just ask, who am I? What is this sound calling forth? And as you sit in that energy and that question, listening for the answer, I'm going to sing a light language blessing for everyone, for their authentic voice, their inner goddess to speak. Naramanio Niaratue Narame Lione Ralonare Niarotumae Lanianushea Lanianushea Blessings to all the goddesses out there.
Thank you, and blessings to you as well, Simile. Thank you for sharing your life lessons. Thank you for sharing your beautiful voice and thoughts. Everything you shared. Blessing. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for giving me another opportunity to stretch my throat chakra inhibitions.
It's my pleasure. And so if our audience would like to find you, how do they do that?
They can find me on my website, which is, I have two websites, domains. It's either triplemoon.com or semilesherry.co.uk, and they both go to the same place.
Well, thank you so very much, Simile Sherry. And by the way, don't spell it the way it sounds like it's spelled. For those of you who are spelled it for her, it starts with an X, not an SH. So yes, thank you so much, Simile. And I think we shall sing our way out and through the rest of the day.
That would be wonderful.
Thank you so very much. Take care, and thank you all for being here and sharing with me and with Simile, and blessings and hum and sing, and we love you all.